Tonight, look up at the night sky. Thousands of tiny lights shine back at you. Some are stars, some are distant planets, and somewhere among them, machines built by human hands are silently traveling through space. One of them belongs to India. But just 70 years ago, that idea would have sounded impossible. In the 1950s, India was a young nation. The country had recently gained independence. Millions of people struggled with poverty. Many villages had no electricity. Schools were scarce. Hospitals were difficult to reach. To many people, building rockets seemed almost ridiculous. Why think about space when so many problems existed here on Earth? It was a fair question, but one man saw something that almost nobody else could. His name was Vikram Sarabhai. He wasn't chasing the moon. He wasn't trying to beat another country in the space race. One simple question stayed in Sarabhai's mind. How could a country with limited resources use space to improve millions of lives? He knew rockets needed more than engineers. They needed the right place to launch. Near the Earth's equator, our planet spins at its highest speed. A rocket launched from there receives a small but valuable boost. It saves fuel, it increases efficiency, and it allows heavier payloads to reach space. For India's first launches, that advantage could make all the difference. The search led to a quiet fishing village on the coast of Kerala. Its name was Thumba. To most people, it was simply another peaceful village. Fishing boats rested on the shore. Children played along the beach. Families gathered every evening after work. Nothing about Thumba suggested it would one day become one of the most important places in India's scientific history. Yet Sarabhai saw something invisible. He saw geography. Thumba lay almost exactly on the Earth's magnetic equator. For scientists studying the upper atmosphere, there was hardly a better location anywhere in the world. The only problem was that people already lived there. At the center of the village stood a small church. It was St. Mary Magdalene Church. No one imagined that this humble building would soon become India's first space headquarters. Sometimes history begins in the places you least expect. It stood quietly beside the Arabian Sea. For years, fishermen and their families came here every Sunday to pray. No one imagined it would become the birthplace of India's space program. When Vikram Sarabhai visited Thumba, he knew this location was scientifically perfect, but there was one problem. The church belonged to the local community. Hundreds of families depended on it. Sarabhai refused to force anyone to leave. Instead, he chose a different path. He asked for permission. The request eventually reached Bishop Peter Bernard Pereira. Instead of saying no, the bishop invited Sarabhai to speak to the people after Sunday Mass. The church filled with fishermen, families, children, and elders. Everyone wanted to know why a scientist wanted their church. Sarabhai explained his dream. He spoke about science. He spoke about education. He spoke about satellites helping farmers, fishermen, teachers, and doctors. He explained that India's future depended on knowledge. When he finished speaking, the church became silent. Then the bishop stood before the congregation. He asked a simple question. Can we give God's house for God's work through science? For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then voices rose together across the church. Amen. That single word changed the future of India forever. The agreement was only the beginning. Within weeks, the church started to transform. The prayer hall became the main office. The bishop's room became the design office. An old cattle shed became the laboratory. Outside, coconut trees stood beside rocket parts. It was unlike any space center the world had ever seen. Scientists worked shoulder to shoulder with local villagers. There were no massive assembly buildings, no giant computers, no billion-dollar facilities, only determination. Many of India's young engineers had never built a rocket before. Every day was a lesson. Every mistake became experience. Every success brought new confidence. Equipment arrived from different countries. Some instruments came from the United States. Others came from France. Each component had to be assembled carefully by hand. The work was slow. Resources were limited. But nobody complained. Everyone understood they were building something far bigger than themselves. Soon another challenge appeared. There were almost no proper transport vehicles. The roads were narrow. Heavy trucks could not reach many areas. So the scientists found another solution, one that would become legendary. The solution was surprisingly simple. If trucks could not carry the rocket, bicycles could. Rocket nose cones were carefully balanced on the back of ordinary bicycles. Sensitive instruments traveled through narrow village roads. Some larger rocket components were placed on bullock carts. The image looked almost unbelievable. A nation's space dream moved forward at the speed of a bicycle. Villagers watched with curiosity. Some smiled. Some laughed. Others quietly wondered if these strange machines would ever fly. The scientists ignored every doubt. Their focus never changed. Every journey brought another rocket part closer to the launch site. Every bolt tightened was another step toward history. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was taken for granted. Each successful day proved that determination could replace expensive machines. The launch date finally arrived. The entire team knew this moment would decide the future of India's space program. The rocket stood quietly on the launch pad. It wasn't the biggest rocket in the world. It wasn't the most powerful. But to everyone standing there, it represented something far greater. Years of planning, months of preparation, thousands of hours of work. Every sacrifice had led to this moment. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The launch team checked every instrument one final time. 7, 6, 5. The control room became completely silent. 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. For a brief second, nothing seemed to happen. Then bright orange flames burst beneath the rocket. A cloud of smoke spread across the ground. The rocket slowly lifted into the sky. Within seconds, it climbed higher than anyone had ever imagined. Then cheers erupted across the launch site. India had taken its first successful step into space. The rocket climbed higher and higher. Within moments, it became nothing more than a tiny white dot against the sky. Then it disappeared completely. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Every scientist waited for confirmation. Then the tracking instruments responded. The mission was a success. Relief spread across every face. Some engineers smiled quietly. Others hugged each other. Years of hard work had finally paid off. It wasn't just a successful launch. It was proof. Proof that India could build advanced technology. Proof that limited resources did not limit great ideas. Proof that determination could overcome impossible odds. The success of Thumba inspired a new confidence across the country. The small church had become the birthplace of a national dream. Scientists no longer wondered if India could build a space program. Now, they asked a different question. How far can India go? The answer arrived a few years later. In 1969, India officially created the Indian Space Research Organization. The new organization carried forward Vikram Sarabhai's vision. Its mission was never simply to explore space. Its mission was to improve life on Earth through space technology. That philosophy still guides ISRO today. ISRO had finally been born, but creating an organization was only the beginning. Building a space program would take decades. Every laboratory had to be built from scratch. Every engineer had to be trained. Every rocket had to teach a new lesson. The early years were filled with challenges. Money was limited. Technology was scarce. Experience was almost non-existent. But the dream never changed. Young scientists arrived from universities across India. Many were in their 20s. They shared one belief. India should never depend on others forever. If the country wanted to stand on its own, it had to build its own technology that became ISRO's greatest strength. The first victories did not happen on the moon. They happened here on Earth. ISRO's earliest satellites were designed to solve real problems, not to impress the world, but to help the people living below. Weather satellites watched storms forming over the oceans. For the first time, forecasters could warn communities before dangerous cyclones arrived. Fishermen received better information before sailing into rough seas. Farmers gained more accurate weather forecasts for planting and harvesting. Communication satellites connected places that had been isolated for generations. Remote villages could finally receive television broadcasts. Children in distant schools could learn from teachers hundreds of kilometers away. Doctors could share knowledge across the country. Disaster management became faster. Rescue teams received better information during floods and cyclones. The technology that once seemed impossible was quietly becoming part of everyday life. Most people never saw the satellites above them, but they benefited from them every single day. That was exactly what Vikram Sarabhai had imagined decades earlier. Space was never the destination. People were. Every great achievement has a beginning. For ISRO, that beginning was never a giant rocket. It was an idea that science should serve ordinary people. It began with one man who refused to believe poverty should limit ambition. It began with a quiet fishing village called Thumba. It began inside a small church beside the Arabian Sea. It began with young engineers willing to learn from every mistake. It began with bicycles carrying rocket parts. It began with bullock carts carrying impossible dreams. None of those people knew how history would remember them. They simply did their work. One drawing, one calculation, one bolt, one experiment, one launch. Step by step, they built something larger than themselves. They built confidence. They built knowledge. They built a future. Today, when people look at ISRO, they often see rockets. They see satellites. They see launch pads. But those are only the results. The Real Foundation was built long before the first great success. It was built through courage, through patience, through humility, through teamwork. Most importantly, it was built by people who believed that impossible was only temporary. The story of ISRO is not really about rockets. It is about what a nation can achieve when vision becomes action. And it all began with a church, a bicycle, a bullock cart, and a dream that refused to give up.